So, Pokemon Home's gifts kinda blow. Looking at them all, there's really only one good one. The rest are pretty much just Pokemon that we already have easy access to. So I figured it'd be fun to make a what-if look into some things that they could do, in terms of like special distribution Pokemon for completing certain tasks within Pokemon Home. So I'm gonna start with some things that are a little more down to earth, then branch off into some crazier things. So let's start with the Pokedex for each region. It's great that they have a reward for completing the entire thing, but I think it'd be cool to do one for every regional dex too. So, starting all the way back at the Cancer region, let's just give everyone another Charizard. Everyone loves Charizard. No, I'm joking. I'm joking. We got enough of those. In all seriousness, there are two things that they could do that I think would be pretty cool. The first one is to re-release Lance's Dragonite. Now, I know it's just Dragonite, but this one is directly based off of the one Lance used in the original games, so it has the move Barrier. Normally, Dragonite can't learn Barrier, but for some reason, in the original games, Lance's did, so that would be a decent Pokemon to redistribute in my opinion. The last time we got this Pokemon was back in 2016 for a battle competition in Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, so that would make this one pretty special if we were to get a re-release for it. Now, a much better thing that they could do is they could distribute a Mewtwo. Now, this one wouldn't just be a regular standard Mewtwo or a shiny one, it'd be directly based off the armored Mewtwo from the original Mewtwo Strikes Back film. They could model it off of the remake of that movie too, but I'm still holding out hope that they'll allow special Pokemon to be transferred from Go into the mainline games. I mean, they keep giving out these hat Pikachus that I don't know what to do with. I've got a million of them, and I would actually really like the Mimikyu one to be usable in the game, as well as the clone one, so Game Freak, Niantic, please. Anyway, there wouldn't be any sort of stat differences on this Mewtwo compared to a regular one at all, so statistically it would be the exact same. It's just got a different look to it. Moving on to Johto, I think there's only one clear-cut choice for a gift Pokemon. A Pokemon that has been stuck in Johto since Gen 4. And that would be the spiky-eared Pichu, which, yes, is just like a regular Pichu, except with, you know, more fur on one of its ears, but still, it'd be nice to see this little guy make a comeback. Maybe even take it a step further and allow for it to evolve into a spiky-eared Pikachu or Raichu. That way it can be more than just a collector's item collecting dust in a box somewhere. Overall, I think if they're gonna do something for Johto, then this would be the only logical option. Hoenn's Dex is one that's a little weird for me. See, there is one Pokemon that I have in mind, but it's not a Hoenn Pokemon. But it relates to the Pokemon contest that Gen 3 introduced, and is, like the spiky-eared Pichu, locked into its debut game. I'm of course talking about the cosplay Pikachu. I'd say re-release this Pokemon, and even go as far as to include it in future installments of the franchise too. Sure, in its debut game it was just a Pikachu in a funny outfit with a unique move tied to each outfit, but if they reintroduced it, then they could buff the concept a bit. Change types, abilities, have each outfit alter stats. I could honestly do a whole video talking about bringing cosplay Pikachu back, but I honestly feel like it should, and I think as a gift through Home would be perfect. Look at it this way, Pikachu Libre alone has been keeping cosplay Pikachu's legacy alive, with its most recent debut showing up in Pokemon Go in February of 2020. If not the entire cosplay Pikachu, then Pikachu Libre at the very least. Moving on to the Sinnoh region, I legitimately have no idea what they could do for this one. I've thought about it a lot, I can't come up with anything. There wasn't too many special Pokemon like this that Sinnoh could offer. Honestly, it may just be best to wait for the remakes on this one. As it is, the past two regions I've talked about both involve something specific to their own respective remakes. By all means, if you guys have any ideas, then leave a comment below. I'd love to hear it, because, again, I can't come up with anything for Sinnoh, unfortunately. But let's move on to Gen 5, which is honestly also pretty difficult to come up with anything for. However, I think I do have an idea that'd be a pretty decent throwback. Release N's Reshiram, or have the player choose if they want Zekrom instead, I guess. N has been depicted with Reshiram more often than not, but some players may rather have the Pokemon they like better, rather than the one that's more canon. So I'd honestly recommend leaving Zekrom as an option, just in case. But anyway, the special thing about this one would happen when it's sent out of the Pokeball. Back in Generation 5, if you caught one of N's Pokemon, it'd have a special shine effect when it came out of the ball. When those Pokemon are transferred out of Gen 5 and into Gen 6, they lose that special effect. So make this legend have it permanently in all titles moving forward. All in all, I think that'd be a pretty nice throwback to Generation 5. Now Gen 6, that's an easy one. Release AZ's Floet, otherwise known as the Eternal Flower Floet. For those who don't know, this Pokemon has been in the files of every game from X and Y up until Sword and Shield, and I don't just mean as a model used in a cutscene either. It was fully battle ready, came with its own special stats, and even an exclusive move called Light of Ruin. This Pokemon was never made obtainable, but stuck around in the game files throughout Gen 6 and 7. Likewise, when you hack it into your game, transfer it to Bank, then transfer it into Home, the Switch version won't display an image. However, the mobile version will display the model, so even in Gen 8, its model can still be found somewhere. This is the easy thing to choose as a gift for accomplishing anything relating to Gen 6. And honestly, I'm surprised that even after all this time, it still hasn't been released yet. I figured this would be a perfect way for them to finally get this Pokemon out into the wild. Everyone's reaction when it finally does release though, am I right? Anyway, Gen 7 faces a similar problem to Gens 4 and 5. There really weren't too many special out there Pokemon that we could choose from. However, there is one Pokemon that was pretty unique that showed up exclusively in the Sun and Moon anime. Acerolla's Mimikyu. Basically, it's just a shiny Mimikyu with a bit of patchwork done to its disguise and a little flower on one of the disguise's ears. Considering Mimikyu's popularity, releasing a special version of it would be kinda cool. Now with Generation 8, it's honestly still too soon for it in my opinion. Honestly, anything they do now may end up feeling dated or just not special enough by the time the generation is over, but they're in a unique position with it. Unlike the previous generations, they could create a Pokemon completely unique to Home, just for the sake of it being a Pokedex completion reward. That, or they could just release a Gigantamax full Eternatus. That wouldn't really make sense from a lore standpoint, but I think that'd be kinda cool instead. But that about does it for the Pokedex completion rewards. There's still the Unknown slot, but that only includes Meltan and Melmetal, so if you want to do something for that, then just give out the Gigantamax Melmetal, since the ones we have can't do that yet. But since there's only two, we'll really just kinda skip that one. Also, rather than just simple Pokedex completions, they could have these be for finishing Pokedex research assignments, which, as of right now, only exists for 2 games, and doesn't offer any completion rewards whatsoever. It would make obtaining these a little harder for sure, but would allow the research tasks to offer some more incentive to actually go out and do them. But with all that reasonable stuff out of the way, let's get weird, shall we? Let's delve into the realm of actual impossibility, because, let's face it, while all the stuff I mentioned so far is likely to never happen, the next few things are definitely never happening. So, let's move on to some other things. Look, I think it's great that Home connects all the mainline titles together, and Go, but I think that we can make this complicated web even more complicated by connecting them to some spin-off titles. Oh yeah, we're going down that road. Now, I'm not saying you should be able to boot up Pokemon Quest and transfer Pokemon out of it into Home for use in the mainline games, but use what Home does best to its advantage to offer some really unique rewards for completing tasks in these spin-off titles. Basically, what Home does is that it reads and alters save data, so why not have it read save data from some other titles on the Switch as well, and offer rewards for your achievements in those games. Now, before we get onto Switch spin-offs, let's go way back to 2005, with Pokemon XD. Gale of Darkness. Look, if it's not obvious what the gift is already, then I don't know what to tell you. Now, I'll start off by saying I'm not sure how much information the Pokemon themselves lose down this complicated mess of a transfer sequence. However, they should still accurately store data for which game they originated from. So, let's say you still have a Lugia from XD. You'd have to have transferred it from your GameCube onto your Game Boy Advance, onto your DS, onto another DS, onto your 3DS, then onto your Switch. That's quite the journey. So once that Lugia is registered, Home will be able to look at the game origin of it and say, hey, that's from XD. Here's a reskin Lugia to look like Shadow Lugia. Now, just like the armored Mewtwo I mentioned before, it'd have the exact same stats. It's purely aesthetic. I mean, they could go out with it and at the very least introduce the 4 moves it knew in the original game, but a remodel would be enough, I'd think. I know Shadow Pokemon are meant to be purified, so this Lugia needed saving in its original game in this form, but I think this would be a great gift for the fans who have managed to hold on for that Pokemon for so long. I personally never played XD, or Coliseum for that matter, but I know they have a pretty decent cult following, so I think this would be a nice nod to the fans of those games. Now, let's move closer back to the modern era. The Shadow Lugia falls within something that Home can register from within itself, using a Pokemon added to it. However, if Home can look into save files, why not some Pokemon spin-offs on the same console as it? To start off, let's begin at Pokken Tournament Dx. Now, there are a few things they could do with Pokken. For the sake of argument, let's say you beat the story mode. It's simplistic, but bear with me. You do that, and you get a reskinned Mewtwo to look like the Shadow Mewtwo from the game. Same as the Armored Mewtwo and the Shadow Lugia, it would be purely aesthetic, but I mean, come on, who wouldn't want this Mewtwo? Shadow Mewtwo is the clear standout from this game, so it would make sense to give it out for completing a task within it. While Shadow Mewtwo is the most likely to make its way out of the game, the roster includes 23 Pokemon in total. So let's say you win 100 battles as each Pokemon on the roster. Home could then read that information from Pokken's save, and then give you their alternate color as something to take into the mainline games with you. There are some pretty good ones in there too, not gonna lie, and like I said, we're delving into the impossible here now, so while I'd like for these things to happen, I doubt they ever really will, but come on, this would be cool. Next, we'll get into a game that actually isn't a Pokemon game at all, but has involved Pokemon since the initial title. That's right, we're talking about Super Smash Bros. Ultimate now. Now, there are a lot of Pokemon in Smash, and way too many recolors to suggest what I did with Pokken. So let's keep it relatively simple. Let's say that you 100% the World of Light campaign, right? Home would read that, say, congratulations, you've beaten the World of Light, then hand out a Mario Cap Pikachu. Yes, it's just another standard hat Pikachu, but Pikachu has been in the game since the beginning. It's based primarily off of Nintendo classics, and Mario is the mascot of Nintendo. I feel like this is the most thematic choice. Then there's Pokemon Quest. Like, I won't knock you for liking this game, but I really didn't. This game is weird. There's not really a whole lot there that you could do for it. With all the Pokemon being blocky, you really can't move them or anything based off of them from Quest into a mainline game. Except for one Pokemon. There already exists a Pokemon that is pretty blocky to begin with, so the best I could come up with for this is to release a Porygon that's based directly off the one seen in Pokemon Quest. It's a bit of an oddball take, but if you complete the Pokedex, then this might be pretty interesting for those who like this game. Now we're moving on to the final game, and man, would I love to see some mainline representation for this one. Pokemon Mystery Dungeon, Rescue Team DX. If you know me, then I love the Mystery Dungeon franchise. It's legitimately one of the best things Pokemon has ever done with the franchise. There are two things that Home could check for with the remake, the first of which would be the title screen completion. Basically, when all these boxes are filled in, Home would read this, notify you, and you'd be given two Pokemon. These two Pokemon would depend entirely on what you chose as your player and your partner. So in my case, I'd get a Torchic and a Mudkip. But they'd have something unique about them. They'd be wearing the Rescue Team scarves you see in the game. Honestly, Chunsoft did us dirty and removed the scarves when we evolved, but I'd suggest having the evolutions keep the scarves in some form or another if they got into the mainline titles. That way you can evolve them and they'd still have something unique about them. Because, let's face it, you wouldn't even be able to use a Torchic or a Mudkip in raids properly, but giving players Pokemon based off their player and partner would honestly be kinda cool. Completing the home screen can take a lot of time and dedication too. It's not exactly an easy task to complete. Also, quick side note, these Pokemon would not be able to breed for one obvious reason. I said we get weird, but not that weird. Moving on, the last thing Home could check for is recruitment completion. Basically, if you recruit one of every Pokemon in the entire game. It's essentially filling up the entire Pokedex. This can be arguably harder than completing the home screen too, but it would offer a different reward if completed. Basically, what I have in mind is to finally, after it first being shown 19 frickin' years ago, they could finally release that purple Kecleon. This version of Kecleon has never been made available, with it first showing up all the way back in the Pokemon Johto series in 2001 in Japan and 2002 globally. In that same episode, it was also the first Gen 3 Pokemon ever revealed. So, needless to say, it's existed for a very, very long time, and has only ever been shown once in the anime, and has been shown repeatedly in the Mystery Dungeon series as a shopkeeper. If there was ever something that could be given out of the Mystery Dungeon series, then it's this guy right here, after almost 2 decades. Also, if we get any additional remakes in the future, then, you know, we could maybe get a reskin of a certain antagonistic time lizard for completing the recruitment too, you know? Just saying. Anyway, that about does it, to be honest. I think I've kept you all long enough with my ramblings, so I'll go ahead and wrap it up here. If y'all have any other ideas, then I would love to hear them, and I hope you enjoyed me ranting into a microphone for around 15 minutes straight, talking about some random ideas we'll never see implemented. If you liked, drop a like, comment, all that smooth jazz, and I will see you in the next one. Later.